Hey guys, welcome to our review of the Primal Shots podcast. We're doing a debriefing here today, looking at the great episode we had with Nick Hutchison. I had such a great time with Nick, and I'm looking at this episode, and there's so many highlights, but there's some that I think are really worth visiting, and so we're going to dive in today and just look at a few of these. And the first one I'm going to jump to is when he talks about his morning routine. Man, this guy has some morning routine. I thought I had a good routine, but listening to him, it was just like puts me to shame.
Dog out. Now, an important part of bringing the dog out is actually grounding and sunlight. So I go out into the backyard with my shoes off. I feel the grass, I feel the earth on my
I
bare
love
feet.
it.
And in the corner of my backyard, over the fence and around my house, is where the sun peeks through. So within 5 minutes of waking up, I get early sunlight exposure into my eyes. I try to look at the sun for as long as I can while I'm grounding, feed the dog, and then I go upstairs and I'll do a couple of different things depending on where I am in life and at what stage my routine has progressed or regressed. But I'll tell you about today. So today I sat down in front of my red light therapy device and I did 3 rounds of Wim Hof breathing, which is something that fluctuates with me. Sometimes I'll be really into it for a few months. Sometimes I'll trade it out for something else, just like silent meditation,
Wim Hof.
which has been a big part of the last 10 years. I actually went and got certified, I guess, for transcendental meditation. So I did that for a long time. And so I change what type of mindfulness activities I do every morning. And then I'll do a little bit of journaling sometimes. Sometimes I'll answer a few emails. I'll get some reading done. But today, that's the very first couple of things that I do when I wake up in the morning.
I love it. What a great routine. He does this Wim Hof breathing and does the red light sauna. My first chapter in my book, as I mentioned in the podcast, it's all about connecting with the earth. And everything he said is just resonates with what I talk about and what I write in the book. And such a great way to start your day, right? Like just feel grounded and having that primal connection with your body is so important. I could see why he's so energized. The second key highlight of this podcast, I believe, was his coin story.
Paid from the world's smartest people to read and implement material from their books. I mean, who wouldn't love that? Especially a book reader like me. I mean, that was a big part of my identity. And so, fast forwarding a little bit more, we started offering other services to authors. We'd fly out and help them film content. We would interview them for our podcast. And so, to bring it to your point, we were out in LA and I still had my full-time software sales job. I'm a couple of years out of college now. I'm making a good amount of money because I read and implemented a lot of sales books, breaking company records. The company I'm working for was acquired by multiple VCs, so more responsibility, leading a sales team. Life is good, but I'm not happy. What really brings me energy is this BookThinkers side hustle that I have. Now, my side hustle, BookThinkers, already had a couple of full-time people in it. I was earning money through my full-time job and then using that money to build infrastructure in my side hustle. So we're out in Los Angeles one day, and in the morning, I film content at Stephen Pressfield's house.
Stephen Pressfield, by the way, fantastic book that he wrote, The War of Art. And I know Nick likes that book a lot as well. But if you haven't read this book, I mean, this is a great book. Stephen Pressfield is just a legend. And I had a chance to meet him at the last BookThinkers event. And what a gentleman. I mean, the guy is the nicest person on earth. He shook hands with everybody, and anybody that had approached him, he would wait, have them, sit down, chat with them. Such a polite gentleman and wonderful. So I love the fact that he talks about Stephen Pressfield in this episode and his coin story. So here we go.
Audience that aren't familiar with Stephen, he's the best-selling author of some nonfiction works on creativity, like The War of Art, but also some fictional books like The Legend of Bagger Vance, which got turned into a movie featuring Will Smith and Matt Damon. I mean, how cool is that as an author? Then I actually go do a podcast, and then I go to Lewis Howe's, his studio. And we're in his studio for the rest of the day filming podcast content, and he invites some guests by, and it's just the best day ever. So that evening, I'm back at my hotel with a team member. His name is Luke. And we're walking around this little area because we're both doing the 75 hard program and we needed to get some outdoor workouts done. And so we're walking around this area and we're on the 4th or 5th or 6th lap around this little complex outside of the hotel. And I tell Luke, I say, man, I would love to do this full time, but I just need a sign or something from the universe. And I look down, and there's a penny, heads up, right in the middle of the walkway. How could you miss it? That was my sign because earlier in the day, that morning, when I was filming the interview with Stephen Pressfield, he was talking about how he's always been superstitious, about how he's always looked for signs from the universe. And in that interview, he said if he ever finds a penny that's heads up on the ground, he knows it's about to be a great day. It's a little nudge from the universe saying, hey, you're on the right path. And so I looked down at that penny, and Luke looked at me, and I said, I'm quitting my job on Monday. And I went back to the office. I quit my job on Monday, and I went full-time into BookThinkers. And to wrap up the story, the following month, we doubled our revenue, not because of the additional time that I was putting into the business, but I believe it was just confirmation from the universe that I had made the big, bold decision and that it was the right one. And so,
How many of you are going to go look for pennies tomorrow, right? Such a fantastic story, so inspirational. And I love that. I love that coin story. And everybody has that some level of superstition and kind of you're looking for signs from the universe, a heads up coin or some number that you see on a number plate or somebody's t-shirt. But whatever works, if that motivates you to make the right decision, go for it. We have the ability to make an infinite difference. And the question I want to ask you, Nick, here is, with everything you're working on, with BookThinkers going where it is going, I know you have this great event coming up in July, which is your annual BookThinkers conference, and looking forward to being there with you. And what is the legacy that you see? I know you have a little one, and I'm sure you're thinking about that, right? And I guess maybe my kids are older and I'm closer maybe than you are to that question. But I'm sure back of your head, you're thinking that, what is the lesson? What is the impact I want to leave behind? And where do you see BookThinkers going from here?
It's actually more front of mind for me than I would say most people my age. In fact, I have a tattoo on my neck that says Memento Mori, which is Latin
Crazy
for remember
tattoo.
you're going to
Did
die.
you see that?
And so I see that every single day. I'm fascinated by death. I know there's a finite amount of time that we're all going to have on this planet. And that saying YOLO, you only live once, is funny because most people use that phrase as an excuse to do something crazy or reckless. I use that phrase as a way to reprioritize and refocus my time and energy. I don't want to waste it. We're only here for a limited amount of time. And so I'm very conscious of that. So many of the authors that have written the books that I read, they talk about their mortality. They talk about the regrets that they have in life. They talk about the things that they wish they did differently. And I'm here to read those books, to absorb that understanding, and to change my life as a result of it. And so, yes, we're all going to die. And it's our responsibility to make the time that we have on this planet the best time ever. And so I have a lot of fun. My wife and I travel a lot internationally, and we definitely experience a lot of what life has to offer. When I was younger and when I didn't have my son, I did more of the adrenaline, extreme sports type stuff. Now it's about building a foundation that my children can leverage for the rest of their lives. And when I'm on my
I love what he said about leaving that legacy. In my book, I talk about like the 7 key paradigms for reversing biological age, and the seventh paradigm, which I think it's the capstone of all the seven, is really connecting with mortality. And that's, I wanted to bring that conversation here because, part of aging well, we think about, all these things that we do for wellness and diet and movement, and not to, put any of that at a lower level, or make that any less important. But the final point is that when you connect with mortality, it gives you that sense of urgency in today, and you live life with intention, and that totally changes the quality of your life. And I think that's kind of what he's hinting at, and I love the way he connected that, and he lives it every day, and you could see it in the way he deals with his team members, the way he deals with his family. And I thought it was such a fantastic conversation in this point in the podcast. So let's jump to the next one, which I think you all will enjoy. And I was telling my wife about this one, and she was in tears. You got to watch this. You got to watch this one. One person you would credit the most impact in your life.
my mom. Yeah. Growing up, I had the greatest parents ever. So many people, so many of my friends, they say, when I have kids, I'm going to do this differently. And for me, I said, when I have kids, I'm going to try to replicate what my parents built for us, which is a household full of unconditional love and support. And I think my parents helped me, but also my 3 younger brothers become exactly who we were meant to be. We're all happy, healthy, and great relationships. And I give my parents a lot of credit, but my mom specifically. Just that unconditional love and support, I think, is the foundation that a young person needs to then go take some risks and have the confidence that if it all falls apart, I can lean back on my mom and my dad. And so I'll say my mom's probably had the biggest impact on me out of everybody.
I love it. It was so amazing that he mentioned it, his mom. And I was telling my wife, she was in tears because, I think she looks at our boys, and hopes that they will also say that for her one day, when they're interviewed like this. And so, Nick, that was so sweet. I think all the moms out there need to listen to this. And, I hope your mom sees this, Nick, because she's going to be so happy, and you put it so well. We always look to our parents for support. When they're there for us, it is so meaningful. And as a parent myself, it encourages me to do the same for my boys. The last point that I really want you guys to see, which I think is so important, and Nick covers this so well. What is one message you want to leave them with?
Something we talked about before, there are these studies coming out today that say that Gen Z is the first generation in human history to have a lower average IQ and lower reading comprehension and lower math skills than the previous generation, millennials. So I'm a young millennial. And that's sad because I guess we've been able to track things like IQ now for a couple hundred years, and it's progressively increased bit by bit, generation over generation. And now we're seeing a decline. We're seeing a decline for a couple of different reasons. The data points out that short form content on our cell phones is shortening our attention span. Therefore, we can't learn as efficiently. And all of that time consuming content rather than creating content is hurting the development of our prefrontal cortex. And so from very young ages up through 6 years old, and then all the way up through 20 years old, your executive functions develop as a result of creation. When you're bored and you fill your time by creating a game or reading a book or collaborating with other people, that's how you build the skill of delaying gratification and effective communication. Yet kids today aren't getting access to those executive function development capabilities and facilities because of the short form content and the consumption of social media. And then we're replacing the long form content like physical paper books with audio only, or again, just scrolling on social media. And so I think kids are really missing out on how great long form physical books have been for the development of the human brain and for IQ and reading comprehension and all of those other measurable baselines. And so I just want to say that there is a book out there to solve every single problem that we face as human beings. There's a book to help you acquire any skill or adopt any perspective. And so I think one of my missions now, Kavin, is to help make physical paper books attractive again to young people. Because this atrophying of IQ and reading comprehension and everything else, social communication skills, is sad. And I don't like to see it. There's so much power in physical books. They help you lengthen your attention span and develop great ideas. One of the great things about a book is that an author will lay out a premise and then they'll start to.
Nick makes such a important point here, and I hope you guys get a chance to catch it. And it's just the importance of what a book means, and this is not just information on paper. This is, from my perspective, this is a brain training tool, you know and he talks about how short form content and digital media is replacing the physical books. Beyond that, one of the things is that as you read a book, you're forming this mental map of the story. Not only is there a physical map because you're identifying with the different aspects of the story on those different pages. So there's this physically feeling the story on each page. That's one aspect. But at the same time, every book, whether it's a fiction or nonfiction, right? And in a fiction book, you're creating that world in your head and creating that map, right? And in a nonfiction book, you're creating that framework that author has developed in your head, and you're putting that whole framework together. So either way, you're creating this mental map. And the correlation is that the people who have the biggest mental maps have a higher cognitive reserve. And that really protects you in the long run from uh, decline in memory and dementia. And, if when they did a study on cab drivers in Europe, in London, right? And they found that the cab drivers had some of the most well developed brains because they had such a large mental map of the whole city, right? And now you and I may just have a mental map of our house and maybe our neighborhood, but we don't have a mental map of the whole city. So books give you that capacity to expand your mental maps. And when you expand your mental maps, you expand your cognitive reserve, you protect yourself from cognitive decline and dementia and all that. So I think Nick's point is so profound. And from a neuroscience perspective that I come from, it totally resonates. And so I urge you to catch the full episodes. I'm just giving you the highlights, which I thought were wow moments for me, and I hope you enjoyed them. But we're going to keep bringing you more extraordinary guests like Nick on Primal Shots. So hope to see you on the next one.